I still remember the precise moment my world cracked open. It was a Tuesday morning, 9:17 a.m. The kind of detail that burns itself into your memory when your life divides into before and after. I was in the closet sorting through shirts to send for dry cleaning when my fingers brushed against the stiff cotton of my husband's dress shirt. At first I thought the dark stain on the collar must have been blood from a late-night surgery. William was a cardiac surgeon after all, a man who claimed to save lives while working impossible hours. But the color was wrong, too rich, too crimson. Lipstick. The shirt slipped from my hand as if it had burned me. I stood frozen, staring at the fabric puddled at my feet. My heart hammering so loudly, it drowned out the silence of the empty house. 15 years of marriage. 3 children. And an entire life I thought was unshakable suddenly felt like a fragile glass floor about to shatter beneath me. That night I tried to act normal. I made his coffee, kissed him on the cheek, told him I loved him as he left for the hospital. I clung to denial for one more day, one more breath, until the truth ripped itself from the shadows. When I finally confronted him, my voice barely trembled. "Are you sleeping with her?" I asked, naming Rebecca Harrington, the colleague I had suspected but never allowed myself to believe. He didn't even flinch. He simply removed his watch, placed it on the nightstand, and said yes. The cruelty wasn't in the confession, it was in his tone. Cold. Detached. As if he were reciting a surgical procedure. He followed it with the words that crushed me more than the affair itself. "I want a divorce." I felt my breath leave me like someone had pressed all the air out of my chest. I had spent 15 years putting his career before my own, raising our children, supporting every step of his rise to prominence. And now I was disposable. He gestured around our bedroom, the place where we had conceived our children, cried through miscarriages, mourned my father's death, and he said, "I've outgrown this life, I've outgrown us." That night he slept in the guest room. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, my body aching as though I had been beaten. In the morning I found a business card on the kitchen counter. His lawyer. That was how quickly he moved to erase me. For days I functioned like a ghost. I smiled for the children, packed lunches, sat in the bleachers at Emma's piano recital, all while inside me something was rotting. But when I opened our safe and began sorting through financial records, I discovered betrayal layered deeper than lipstick and lies. Hundreds of thousands of dollars had vanished, withdrawals to an entity called Riverside Holdings, his company, his secret. It was then I knew this wasn't just infidelity. This was a man who had been building a life without me for years, brick by brick, lie by lie. And if he thought he could discard me quietly, he had underestimated the woman he married. With the help of a divorce attorney, I started documenting everything: finances, phone records, hidden accounts, and then came the discovery that sliced me to my core: the truth about our children. A former colleague of William's, Dr. Nathan Brooks, revealed something I could hardly comprehend. During our IVF treatments, years of injections, procedures, heartbreak, William had ensured his sperm was never used. He hadn't wanted children who might inherit his heart condition. So he let the clinic substitute anonymous donors instead, without my knowledge, without my consent. My hand shook as I collected DNA from our children's toothbrushes from William's comb. When the results arrived, the words were clinical detached. The alleged father is excluded as the biological father. Probability of paternity 0%. I remember holding that paper as my world caved in for the second time. He hadn't just betrayed me as a wife, he had stolen from me as a mother. He had taken away my right to choose, my right to know, my right to truth. But grief has a way of hardening into something sharper. Anger. Resolve. And in that moment I swore to myself, if William had spent 15 years constructing a lie, then I would dedicate myself to tearing it down piece by piece, until there was nothing left of the world he built. The day I received the DNA results, I sat in my car for over an hour, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. Outside, people carried on with their ordinary lives, grocery bags in their arms, children skipping across sidewalks, couples laughing at something trivial. I wanted to scream at them. "Don't you see my whole life is a lie?" When I finally walked into the house, William was already gone. His closet half empty, his side of the bathroom stripped bare. The absence was louder than any argument we might have had. On the counter he had left me an envelope, his offer of settlement. Neat cold numbers that reduced 15 years of my devotion to a figure at the bottom of a page. I didn't cry. Instead, I spread the papers across the kitchen table and began circling discrepancies with a red pen. That night, when the children were asleep, I called my attorney. He thinks he can bury me under contracts and numbers, I said, my voice steady. But he doesn't know what I know. The next weeks blurred into a haze of quiet warfare. I combed through bank statements, credit card charges, corporate filings. The deeper I dug, the clearer it became. Riverside Holdings wasn't just a shell company. It was a funnel moving money into accounts tied to Rebecca. Vacations in the Maldives, jewelry purchases, even the down payment on a penthouse apartment downtown. My family's money, my children's future. Meanwhile, Rebecca played her part with cruel precision. She posted photos on social media, her manicured hand in William's champagne glasses, clinking a sparkling ring on her finger. The caption read, "New beginnings with the love of my life." I wanted to hate her, to blame her for everything, but as I studied her life, I realized she wasn't just William's mistress. She was his mirror, ambitious, ruthless, hungry for power cloaked in affection. He hadn't just chosen another woman. He had chosen someone who reflected the parts of himself he wanted the world to see: invincible, untouchable. The final straw came one evening when my son Matthew climbed into bed beside me. He was only 10, small enough that his hair still smelled faintly of baby shampoo. "Mom," he whispered, "is Dad coming back?" I wrapped him in my arms, my throat burning. "No, sweetheart, he's not." He was quiet for a moment. Then he said something that cut through me like glass. "Then we don't need him. We have you." That night I made a decision. I would not let William erase me. I would not let him waltz into a new life while I crumbled in silence. If he wanted war, he would get it. But it would not be a screaming, messy battle. No, it would be precise, surgical. Like the scalpel he wielded so arrogantly in the operating room, I began gathering allies. Nathan Brooks, the doctor who had confided in me about the IVF deception, agreed to testify. "I can't stay silent anymore," he told me. "What he did was unethical. It was criminal." My attorney built a case, brick by brick: financial fraud, medical malpractice, marital misconduct. Each revelation was a thread pulled from the fabric of William's carefully crafted life. The more we uncovered, the more his empire frayed. Still, I knew evidence alone wouldn't satisfy the gnawing ache inside me. I wanted him to feel exposed, powerless, humiliated the way I had felt staring at that lipstick-stained shirt. And that opportunity came sooner than I expected. The hospital hosted an annual gala every spring. A glittering event, all tuxedos and gowns, where William was often paraded as a star surgeon, shaking hands with donors and posing for photos with politicians. Invitations had already been sent before the divorce proceedings began. Mine arrived in the mail, embossed in gold. At first, I tossed it aside. Why would I subject myself to watching him flaunt Rebecca under chandeliers and flashing cameras? But then an idea sparked. What if the truth, the DNA results, the financial fraud, the lies wasn't just confined to court documents? What if it was laid bare in front of everyone who had ever admired him? I tucked the invitation into my purse. The decision was made. For the next month I prepared. I rehearsed words in front of the mirror late at night, words sharp enough to slice through the polished facade he wore in public. I chose a gown that shimmered under light, not for him, but for me. A statement I was no victim. The night of the gala I arrived alone. Heads turned as I entered, whispers trailing behind me. William was already there, Rebecca on his arm, her dress a river of red silk. He looked at me once across the room, his expression unreadable, before turning away. The speeches began, the clinking of silverware against porcelain filling the hall. I waited, my fingers brushing the folded DNA results in my clutch. My pulse pounded like a drum as the moment approached. This was it. My stage. My reckoning. The gala shimmered with false elegance, crystal chandeliers casting fractured light across sequined gowns and tuxedos, champagne flowing as though betrayal and lies could be washed down with bubbles. I sat at a round table near the front. Every nerve in my body taut, every breath measured. The DNA results pressed against my palm inside my clutch, a weight heavier than gold. When William finally took the stage, applause thundered through the ballroom. He stood tall in his tailored suit, Rebecca by his side, like a trophy polished for the occasion. His voice carried easily, smooth and practiced. "We are honored to celebrate another year of life-saving work," he said, lifting his glass. Cameras flashed, smiles bloomed, and all I saw was a man who had stolen years from me, stolen choices, stolen the very truth of our children's lives. As the applause settled, something in me clicked into place. I rose. My chair scraped against the polished floor, the sound cutting through the murmurs like a blade. Heads turned. Conversations stilled. "William," I said, my voice steady though my heart pounded, "before you continue, I think everyone here deserves to know the truth." A ripple of whispers spread through the crowd. William's smile faltered for the first time that evening. "Elizabeth," he said sharply, "this isn't the place." "Oh, it's the perfect place," I cut in. I stepped onto the stage, my heels echoing like thunder. "Because you built this life on lies, and it's time those lies were exposed." I pulled the folded paper from my clutch and laid it on the podium in front of him. Gasps erupted as I spoke the words I had rehearsed 1,000 times in the dark. "These are DNA test results. Results that prove William Monroe is not the biological father of the children he's raised with me. He orchestrated IVF treatments behind my back, choosing donors without my knowledge because he decided I wasn't allowed to know the truth." The room froze, a silence so sharp it hurt my ears. Rebecca's painted smile slipped, her eyes darting like a trapped animal. "And it doesn't stop there." I continued, my voice gaining strength with every word. "Riverside Holdings, the company he funneled money into for years, wasn't just a business. It was his mistress's life fund. Our money, my children's security, lavished on her." William's face drained of color. He reached for the papers, but I snapped them back into my hand. "Don't worry, everyone. Copies have already been sent to the Board of Medicine, the hospital, and the press." The audience erupted, shocked murmurs, gasps, the flash of cameras, capturing not the polished surgeon, but the man stripped bare. A donor rose from his seat, anger flashing in his eyes. "Is this true?" William tried to regain control. His voice raised, desperate. "This is slander, lies from a bitter woman trying to destroy me," but the words fell flat. No one believed him. Not with me standing there calm and unflinching. The DNA results trembling slightly in my hand, yet carrying the weight of truth. Rebecca pulled at his arm. "William, we should go." Her face was pale beneath the red silk, her lips trembling. I stepped closer to the microphone, my gaze sweeping across the room. "I gave this man 15 years of my life. I sacrificed my career, my dreams, my body, my heart. And he repaid me with deceit so profound it reached into the very blood of my children. Tonight I refuse to be silent any longer." Applause began, not polite, not forced, but genuine, rising from the back of the room like a tide. People stood. They clapped, they shouted, they turned their backs on him. For the first time I saw fear in William's eyes. Real fear, not of me but of the collapse he could no longer control. Security moved toward the stage, murmurs about escorting him out. I didn't wait to watch him fall. I had done what I came to do. I stepped down from the stage, every step lighter than the last, my head high. Behind me I could hear the chaos. William's voice raised Rebecca's sharp whispers. The crash of a glass knocked to the floor. But I didn't turn back. That life was behind me now, crumbling like the empire he had built on lies. As I walked out into the cool night air, a strange calm settled over me. The stars glittered above the city, indifferent, yet eternal. For the first time in years, I felt free. The days that followed the gala unfolded like aftershocks of an earthquake. Each morning new cracks appeared in the walls of William's carefully constructed world, and each headline that crossed my phone reminded me that I had pulled the first stone from his fortress. Prominent surgeon under investigation. Whistleblower wife exposes secret funds. DNA test reveals shocking family betrayal. The media devoured the story. Patients who had once sung his praises now demanded answers. Colleagues avoided him in the hallways. The Board of Medicine scheduled emergency hearings. His empire, once untouchable, was collapsing with breathtaking speed, but revenge, I discovered, was a complicated taste. It wasn't pure sweetness, it was bitter, laced with years of grief. Because while he unraveled publicly, I still had to face the private wreckage at home. My children, I sat them down at the kitchen table, the same place where we had shared birthday cakes and spilled orange juice. Emma, 15, with her father's sharp eyes. Noah, 12, restless and angry. Lily, just 8, her legs swinging beneath the chair, too young to fully understand. I took a deep breath. I need to tell you something hard. Something that might make you feel confused or even hurt. My voice cracked, but I pushed on. The man you called Dad, he isn't your biological father. The silence that followed was crushing. Emma's face went pale, her lips trembling. Noah slammed his fist against the table. What do you mean he's not? Lily began to cry. I didn't know, I said quickly, reaching for their hands. I never knew. He made that choice without me, without us. But listen to me, he may not share your DNA, but that doesn't erase what you are. You are mine, every piece of you, my heart, my soul, my everything. Emma's tears spilled over, but she nodded, gripping my hand like a lifeline. Noah turned away. Fists clenched, shoulders shaking. Lily crawled into my lap, burying her face in my chest. That night, as I tucked them into bed, I realized the true cost of his betrayal. It wasn't just money or reputation, it was trust, innocence, the fragile sense of belonging that children deserve, and I hated him for stealing that from them. The legal battles came swiftly. My lawyer presented evidence of hidden accounts, fraudulent transfers, ethical violations. The court froze his assets. Rebecca abandoned him when the press dug into her own past, extravagant trips, designer clothes, all funded by money siphoned from our family. In court, William looked diminished. The man who once strode through hospital corridors like a king, now sat hunched, his jaw tight, his hair graying under fluorescent lights. He glared at me across the room as though hatred alone could undo the truth. But every time our eyes met, I held his gaze. I wanted him to see that the woman he thought he had broken was unshakable now. The judge's ruling was clear: restitution for the stolen funds, forfeiture of his position, pending investigation, supervised visitation if the children chose to see him at all. The words struck him like hammer blows. And though I should have felt triumph, all I felt was an exhausted kind of relief. Life after William was not instantly easier. Bills still needed to be paid. Therapy appointments filled our calendar. The nights were long, filled with children's nightmares, and my own quiet sobbing once the house was dark. But something had shifted inside me. For the first time in years, I was steering my own ship. I began to rebuild piece by piece. I dusted off my old resume, reconnected with colleagues I had abandoned when his career swallowed ours. A nonprofit offered me a position, outreach coordinator for women navigating divorce and financial abuse. Standing in that office on my first day, I felt the weight of purpose press into my chest, steady and strong. And slowly I began to see light return to my children's eyes. Emma poured herself into piano, her music aching and beautiful. Noah joined a debate team, channeling his fury into words sharp enough to cut glass. Lily painted endless rainbows, her small voice humming as she worked. We were scarred, yes, but we were also surviving together. One evening, months later, I walked past the mirror in the hallway and paused. The woman staring back at me was not the same one who had crumbled over a lipstick stain. She was leaner, harder, but also fiercer, steadier. I didn't see a victim anymore. I saw a survivor, and as I looked into my own eyes, I whispered the words I had once thought I'd never believe again. You are enough. And you are free. Freedom is a quiet thing. It doesn't always arrive with fireworks or applause. Sometimes it's the sound of your own breath, steady and calm after years of living on edge. Sometimes it's the laughter of your children around a dinner table, knowing you no longer have to brace yourself for cruelty hidden in a smile. For me, freedom came in fragments. It was the way I no longer checked William's schedule to time my day. It was cooking pasta with Emma without glancing over my shoulder. It was hearing Noah slam a door in teenage defiance and realizing that even his anger was a kind of healing. It meant he was safe enough to feel. It was Lily crawling into my bed at night whispering, "Mom, we're okay now, right?" And being able to answer, "Yes, sweetheart, we're okay." Still, there were scars. The whispers in the grocery store when strangers recognized me from the news. The long nights when Emma couldn't sleep replaying questions about identity and belonging. The guilt that gnawed at me even though none of this was my choice. Healing wasn't linear, it bent and broke and pieced itself together in uneven ways. But it was real. Months after the trial, I received a letter. Not from William, but from one of his former patients. She wrote, "Thank you for speaking up. I always felt something was wrong, but I was too afraid to question him. Your courage gave me mine." I sat at the kitchen table, tears smudging the ink, realizing that my story was no longer just mine. It was a lifeline for others. When the Board of Medicine finally revoked William's license, I didn't celebrate. I simply sat with the knowledge that justice, imperfect as it was, had found him. He had taken so much: our money, our trust, our peace. But in the end, he lost the one thing he valued above all: control. The day I signed the final divorce papers, I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I walked out of that courthouse with the sun on my face and a strange lightness in my chest. The chains had been broken. And though I carried the weight of years of betrayal, I also carried something stronger: resolve. I threw myself into my work at the nonprofit. I sat across from women who told me their stories in hushed voices, stories of gaslighting, of stolen finances, of bruises hidden under sleeves. And each time I looked them in the eye and said, "You are not alone. You are stronger than you know." Because I had lived it. Because I had survived it. One evening after a long day, I came home to find Emma waiting for me with a notebook in her lap. I wrote something, she said shyly, handing it over. Inside was a poem, jagged and raw, about broken glass and rising suns. At the end she had scrawled, "For Mom, who taught me that storms don't last forever. I don't think I've ever cried harder, not from grief but from gratitude." Looking back now, I realize that revenge was never the true ending of my story. It was a catalyst. Yes, it exposed the lies, it stripped William of his mask. But the real ending was quieter. It was in the rebuilding, in the small acts of resilience, in the courage to keep walking forward, even when the ground still shook. Sometimes I still think of him. Not with love, not even with hate, but with a kind of distant pity. He will live the rest of his life haunted by the empire he lost, by the children who no longer call him dad, by the truth that finally clawed its way to light. But me, I live free. My scars remind me of the battles I fought, but they no longer define me. My children are thriving, and I have learned the most valuable lesson of all: that betrayal, no matter how deep, does not have the power to destroy the soul unless you let it. So if you are watching this and you have ever felt the weight of someone else's lies crushing you, hear me now. You are not broken, you are not powerless. And even in your darkest hour, you hold the strength to rise. If my story touched you, please don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who might need hope, and subscribe for more real stories of survival and strength. And if you've ever lived through something like this, leave a comment below. I'd love to hear your story too. Because in sharing we heal, and in healing we rise.